This is the Cereal at Midnight podcast. Hello and welcome to the Cereal at Midnight podcast. My name is Heath Holland, and this week I'm talking to RALPH TRIBBEY, the founder, the maestro behind DVD and Blu-ray release reports, which you can find at DVD and Blu-ray release report.com. RALPH he's been chronicling the numbers, the trends in physical media since the launch of the DVD format back in 1997. But he goes back further than that. He started in the theatrical business, running theaters. He opened the second ever video store in the San Diego area and then went on to become an executive working in sales and marketing at Key Video and at companies like MGM, United Artists. This man has so much knowledge about basically the entire history of home video as we know it. And so what we're going to get into here is really a lot of data that comes from DVD and Blu-ray release report. We're talking about how much product is actually being released. You know, I talk constantly here about how there's never been more released. That's not just me saying this. Did you know that 2023 may very well be a record-breaking year for the number of titles on physical media? There's so much to unpack here, so much information. So I'm just going to cut right to it. Without further ado, RALPH TRIBBEY from DVD and Blu-ray release reports. So with this many movies behind you and with you dedicating so much of your time to movies, do you still have time to watch stuff?
Oh yeah, every night we make time. I'm actually working on a book because I'm a big genre fan. So I'm working on a book for me, and I don't care if anybody ever reads it, on the chronological history of horror, sci-fi, and fantasy, beginning in literally January 1st, 1950, by decade. And the newspaper archives that you can subscribe to. I can get lost for hours just looking at the old movie ads and stuff like that. And a lot of that had to do with when I was a kid, beginning when I was 8 years old. My mom and dad would pack me up and send me into my grandmother's for 3 weeks during the summer. She ran a rooming house over by MacArthur Park. I used to go over to they had 3 theaters. And she ran a rooming house, and she would give me a couple of bucks, and when my chores were done, and send me off to the movies. An 8-year-old kid wandering the streets of Los Angeles. So they had the lake, the West Lake, and the Alvarado. And now the lake and the lake was a grindhouse that would run 2 or 3 features and change twice a week. And the Alvarado and the West Lake were both first-run theaters. So during a 3-week stay, I could book 20 to 24 films, and I just fell in love with that. So I
Hold on, you were going to a grindhouse at 8 years old?
Yes.
Wow. Was it safe? I mean, were you safe?
Yeah, it was. I never thought anything of it. I wouldn't go there now. God almighty. It's MacArthur Park's turned into kind of a derelict's haven.
What kind of movies were you?
Ducks, little boats on the thing.
Yeah. What kind of movies were you seeing at this time?
Whatever was playing. Now, I really like the action stuff and any kind of horror sci-fi film, But a film like Cell 2455 Death Row, I was fascinated with that. I was going like, wow, that's kind of interesting. It didn't seem very fair to him, Carl Chessman, but whatever it was a musical, I'd see a musical, whatever it was. But I really like the sci-fi and the horror. And this entire library back here is a chronological order of films, horror films, sci-fi films from 1950, and it runs all the way around over to here. I could sit there and watch them for hours. But I mean, my wife goes nuts. She says, "Well, we're not going to watch this stupid Blob movie again, are we?" So it's.
Are you frustrated that Susan Hart, or whatever I can't remember her current last name, that she's got these movies, these AIP movies that are still being held hostage?
I know. I've got bootleg copies of them. That I was a teenage werewolf, and I was uh, Monster on Cap, that stuff.
Right.
It's unfortunate, and it's the problem when you don't release stuff like that. The what I call them helpers will step in and take care of that void,
Hmm.
and we're seeing that on steroids these days.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk to you about that.
Okay,
So
as far as what I've done to get here,
I know you had a video. So you were one of the first video stores. Was it San Diego that you
yeah,
had a
San
video store?
Diego.
Yeah.
Well, my background is first, I got a degree in economics from Chapman University, postgraduate work at UNLV. First job out of college, real job, was as a business analyst, financial analyst for Dun & Bradstreet. And they kept giving me raises and promoting me, and I hated it. I just absolutely hated it. So I interviewed with every Southern California theater chain, and none of them would hire me. Finally, this guy named Jules Pincus, who's the regional manager for Lowe's Theater, said, nobody's going to hire you because they're afraid you'll take their job. And I said, well, I just want to learn the business. So finally he relented and hired me as a assistant manager of the Lowe's Theater in Sine, the Sine in Inglewood. So I gave myself a year to learn the business from the ground up. Along the way, I met a guy named Steve Lane. Now, you may be familiar with him when I say Howling, Howling 2, Howling 3, Howling 4. He did all the Howling movies. He did Dean Koontz's Phantoms. He did the 2 Lawnmower Man films. He was the head film buyer at National Cinema at the time. And we got to talking, and literally 1 year from the date that I started at Lowe's, I was vice president of operations for his newly formed theater company, Great Western Theaters. We were extremely successful, so much so that Mann Theaters and United Artists came in and built multiplexes against me. And next to the Strand Theater in Ocean Beach, California, we opened up the second video store in all of San Diego County. And I got a little prop here. It was the Videotape Center. And for $5 a night, a bargain price, you could rent any kind of movie you wanted. The moneymaker was the first run theater that I had here in town. And we could see Steve came down and we talked about it. We could see that we were going to have a problem making money because the whole industry's fixed. Our lease was coming up and we wanted to renegotiate it. And so the owner of the strip mall that owned the theater was none other than Bill Cagney, Jimmy Cagney's brother. So him and his attorney walk into Love's Barbecue. Steve and I sit down, and I was out of the theater business 5 minutes later when Mr. Cagney said, well, I'm raising the rent, and not only that, I want a piece of the concession sales. And if you're ever been in the theater business, you don't make any money showing movies. You make all your money selling popcorn, hot dogs, Cokes, candy. So 10 years of running theaters ended in a 5-minute conversation with Bill Cagney. Never had lunch with him.
Wow.
So I took the inventory with the Videotape Center, and I had met Jim Laum, who had founded Video Crossroads International. His son-in-law was Gary Carter. And if you're a baseball fan, he was a Hall of Fame catcher with the New York Mets. At the time, he was with the Montreal Expos. And he had founded the Orange County video stores, which is important. His thing was he was going to franchise. He had Ray Kroc's Grinding It Out book. And he had financial backing. And so we had like 30 franchises. Here's another prop I'll show you. What we were doing, what I was doing for all our franchises was this. It was a poster newsletter. And it folded out to a poster. And it had all these reviews. So if you're a consumer, you walk in and you see this. Every movie you hear and every movie that ever appeared in this publication is the greatest movie that was ever made. So you need to get this. You need to rent this. So the franchises were all still in business. So I just did the newsletters for them. And to make a long story short, I ended up over the years building this up to 100,000 newsletters a month. It was a nice little business. Herb sold Major Video Concepts after a while with Sounds Video Unlimited, which was another big distributor at the time. He got an offer to be president of Key Video, which was owned by 20th Century Fox in partnership with CBS. And he hired me to do the marketing. So I've got complete carte blanche to do whatever we want. So for the first year, we were budgeted for $1.5 million. We did 8. The next year, we were budgeted for 8. We did 16. And our third year in business, we were budgeted for 16. They just kept whatever the number was before. We did 32. And then at that point, CBS and Fox, I guess, parted ways, and they decided to relocate from New York out to California. And Herb was basically written out of the business. And about a year later, MGM did the same thing. They moved their operation from New York out to the West Coast. They hired Bud O'Shea from CBS Fox to be the president. Bud turned around and immediately hired Herb to be senior vice president of sales and marketing. And guess who got to be head of marketing for MGM? Now I'm running a studio. I got 26 people working for me, and we did everything. I mean, I did that for 4 years until Kokorian, you probably know the history, sold the company to an Italian waiter, had no money. And did a lot of consulting after that. Ended up at Orion Pictures, consulting there. Had my own office and everything. Was working for Len White, his only job was to sell the company. And it was at that time I was sitting down with Bud O'Shea, my former boss from MGM, and we were talking about this new thing coming in called DVD. And I reasoned that there's probably a business there if you just reported on what was being released on DVD. So I started the DVD release report, and I've been doing that for the last 27 years.
That was in 97, right? March 97.
March 97, yeah.
Yeah. You've set up so many things here. Well, the first thing I want to ask you, so I remember I've been buying my movies for over 30 years now, going back to the VHS. Like my dad, we were one of the first people in our neighborhood that had a Betamax player in the mid 80s, right? And so we would go, there was a store in the mall that had beta stuff, and we had Swiss Family Robinson from Disney, and we had Star Trek the motion picture. So I've been around media for my whole life, but when I started buying my own movies, it's been over 30 years. I remember a palpable excitement when DVD entered onto the scene, and it felt like this is like bringing the cinema home, right? This is like bringing that cinematic big screen experience into your home. You felt that too from the other end of the business?
It was a game changer, because remember, I'm coming from the VHS world. I mean, we would sell a video cassette. The wholesale price would be $42.50. That was the wholesale price.
Well, you got to translate that to inflation too. That's a lot of money. That's
because
that'd be like $90 or something.
It was the rental business, and we did just tonnage of this stuff. But the moment I saw DVD, I mean, literally, Bud had some of the first stuff delivered to him at his office at Orion Pictures, and we put one of these things on, and it is a game changer. I mean, the difference between VHS and DVD was just off the charts, and you knew that that was going to be the future. Which is one of the things that gets crazy, is that back when it was really firing away. Once they got it down from being $3 to $5 to replicate a disc down to 30 cents, and the whole business took off. The joke was the only business on the planet that had better profit margins was cocaine dealers. And they've literally taken this business model and just tossed it aside. The other thing that goes hand in hand with that is the studios and Warner Brothers and Disney are making a show of celebrating their 100th year in the business. They spent 100 years building this mousetrap of theatrical distribution. And if you take 97 when DVD launched, I made that the demarcation point for new theatrical and theatrical catalog. And the reason for that was so I could monitor the window, how long it took from a film to open theatrically till it hit DVD. So they're all the same. It's still movies, but
right.
If you just look at new theatrical, over 99% of all films released since 1997 theatrically that have grossed $25 million or more are all from the studios. And now you're taking films like Artemis Fowl, this latest thing, $125 million film. You take it direct, you don't even put it in the theaters, and you take it direct to streaming, and then you write it off.
It's crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, that's insane.
I keep thinking maybe there's something I don't know, like, well, maybe there's something they're not telling me.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. It's like, I must be missing something. It must be an accounting thing.
Yeah.
Where this makes all the good sense in the world, except last year, the studios lost $800 million a month on average from their streaming business. I mean, if Evans was running Paramount and he lost $5 million on a film, his job was in jeopardy.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. Anyway,
I guess when you're making billions in other areas, I guess they're competing. All these studios are competing to have the primary streaming service. And I guess in the grand scheme of these billion-dollar budgets or whatever, they're like, well, we can afford that loss for now. But
if you look at the cash flow for Comcast Universal and Viacom Paramount, they're running into some cash flow issues that are eventually going to have to bring some rational discussion. See, like Sony Pictures, for example, that doesn't do this. They simply take their films, put them theatrically, put them on DVD, Blu-ray, 4K, and license them either to Netflix or Amazon Prime. They're not in the business of we're going to see how streaming works out and lose how much money we can in the meantime. So I suspect that, and I'm just guessing, but I suspect that we're going to see that shift come into play at the studio level for some of these that are going like, well, maybe we should go back to the promo better best way of delivering product to the consumer, as opposed to just running a theater and not selling any popcorn. I mean, that's the analogy, is that they're just doing one thing and they're losing money at it, and that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, did you see this news as we're recording this in the last 24 hours or so? The news has come out that the French Connection.
Oh God, yeah, that's insane.
I tweeted about it. My tweet has it's over 5 million. It's been seen over 5 million times in a day.
That's criminal.
People are furious about it, and it's an example of Disney, I guess, thinking. I mean, I don't want to assume, but it seems like they think, well, we can have our cake and we can eat it too. We own this asset. We can censor it. We can edit it. We don't have to tell anybody. It's our well, it's not just their platform, because it's on the Criterion channel, and the theatrical prints that are going out have been edited. And so people say, well, physical media is the answer, right? But the next pressing of the French Connection is probably going to have that edit on it, right? So
I got my French Connection bit
squirreled
away over there.
Yeah, me too.
when I saw that, I immediately thought back a couple of weeks ago. Spielberg did an interview where he was talking about some edits were made to E.T.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of foreshadowed what might be taking place. He may be privy to some internal conversations about they're going to get French Connection may be just the tip of the iceberg of what might be to come. And that's just terrifying because in the publishing business, we're seeing books literally being rewritten, which I have a problem with. But maybe that's just me.
It's not just you, it's me too. And we're both physical media advocates and physical media fans. I mean, you've dedicated most of your life, to this book that we're talking about here. But I think this issue is bigger than physical media because it goes to the very creation of the art itself and the people that are distributing the art wanting to control what it actually says. And I don't think you can do that. Well, they are doing it, but I don't think you can ethically do that. And I think that people are starting to realize, hey, wait a minute, these companies they're overstepping. Where it goes from here, I don't know.
Well, it's like they say, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
But they're not seeing the what the market really looks like. They're just seeing it from their little corner of the world. And if you looked at it from a studio point of view, it looks like, well, we're not in the DVD business anymore because that's so old, and we do some Blu-rays, but we're really kind of focused on 4K, and then we're also focused on these other things, streaming. At being studio centric myself, having worked for 3 different studios, I sort of saw the business that way too. I'm impressed with what a lot of the what do you call them, boutique are doing.
Boutique labels.
They're basically doing the studio's job because the studios are lazy. So from MVD and Arrow and Severin and Kino Lorber and Shout Factory and Mill Creek and Bayview's doing all sorts of stuff. There's where sort of the action is that we see, but then you get into what's left over. Give you an example. DVD, just DVD. This is through literally May 31st. The studios and their affiliates like CBS, Home Entertainment, Showtime, put out 165 DVDs during the first 5 months of the year. So that looks like a nothing business to them. During the same time, the entire industry put out 13,339. So they had 1.24% of the share. All these boutique labels that we are very familiar with and that where we enjoy what they're doing, they put out 11% of the release pie. They put out 1,493 DVD titles during the first part of the year, and some of those legit sources don't have anything to do with making movies. They're like religion, how to, this stuff like that. Then there's these 2 other great areas, and what we'll put piracy off to the side. But there's another one that I just found absolutely fascinating, and I stumbled upon it about 12 or 15 years ago when I came across PCN Productions. And I thought PCN Production was a PBS affiliate. There's about a half a dozen or so that kind of operate within the PBS family, but they do their own thing. So I just kind of chalked them up as another PBS kind of thing, until I began to see more and more of this. And there's 2 areas that they're basically micro broadcasters. a cable access, TV access, there's probably 200, 250 of these self-contained television networks that operate at the local level.
Mm-hmm.
And they discovered a market. And think about it, the local high school basketball game, or Friday night football, or the girls lacrosse, and in some areas girls hockey, game's going to get played anyway. I mean, every day there's some high school sporting event when the schools are in. Why not take a camera down there and broadcast it on your local broadcast network? And then they discovered, well, we've got the tape. It didn't cost us anything. Why not make a DVD and see if anybody would buy it? Another area where they make some money is they go down to the local commencement exercise. High school, everybody graduates. They record the hour and a half of people walking across the stage. The local 5th grade middle school has a spring concert. They record it. The city council has a meeting. They record it.
And
So
these numbers are reported, that you're able to find the numbers of these things?
Once you know where to look.
Okay.
So, for example, in just the first 5 months of this year, they put out 2,510 titles in a market that you don't even know exists. They do more than all the boutiques and the studios combined in just terms of output. Now, revenue-wise, it's a whole different game. But you have to assume the following: either these are independently wealthy people that don't care if they make money or not, that just love doing this, so they do it over and over again to lose money. It's like Citizen Kane, where he's going to lose $1 million a year running the newspaper, but he doesn't care.
Right.
Or they're making money at it. And if you look at the trend lines, they keep putting more and more of this stuff out, so they must be making money at it. They're not making a lot of money, but if you're running a micro broadcast network, every little bit helps. The local advertising, the local DVD sales, the other stuff you do. Then they've discovered something that the pirates have also discovered. When Blu-ray was launched in 2006, it was for higher definition, more quality stuff. It was marginally better. If VHS to DVD was 90-10, DVD to Blu-ray was 95-90. So it was marginally better, but you have more bandwidth, you could do more things. Well, they've discovered that we don't care about the HD part of it. We care about the bandwidth. We've got more room. So the pirates, what they're doing is they'll take an 8 or 10 season, or eight or 10 episode season, a complete season, like Yellowstone, and dump it on one Blu-ray disc, just jam it in there. Well, these micro broadcasters figured the exact same thing out. If you have a football game that runs 180 minutes, getting it on DVD is a bit of a problem, but on Blu-ray, not a problem at all. So when you look at the Blu-ray market to date, we put out 3,462 Blu-ray titles that I've documented through the first 5 months. The studios have put out 162 of that. That's 4.8%. I mean, wow. It's their business, and yet they only contribute less than 5% of the release pie. The legitimate guys, all the boutique labels, produce another 20.5%, or 712 titles. But these little micro broadcasters are putting out 410 Blu-rays in the first 5 months of the year, which is more than twice what the studios are doing.
Yeah.
Then you've got the big chunk, and
here we go.
You'll get back to why some of what the studios are doing right now seems completely irrational, but in a certain sense, it makes sense why they're not chasing all these helpers. not playing whack-a-mole. If you're willing to write off Timmy Failure, the $42 million production, McCarthy's movie, why would you care if somebody's putting out Mandalorian on Blu-ray?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're taking those kind of hits, do you really care if somebody's selling 10,000 copies from different sources of Mandalorian, especially if you have shown no interest in putting it out on Blu-ray yourself? I use the word helper.
Why do you use that word helper?
Yeah, because I got to say pirate. I mean, I was appointed by Bud O'Shea to go sit with all the other studios to talk about piracy back in the VHS days. And we worked with the FBI. You know, we had sent out, we had a business affair guy, Ron Mealy. Ron Mealy was sending out cease and desist letters all the time. You just wonder if it's kind of like, well, contemporaries are sitting around a staff meeting and the subject of piracy comes up, because they're not stupid. They're not oblivious to the fact that they're being ripped off.
Yeah.
And they go, well, let's put a pencil to that. What do you think they're stealing? Well, they're stealing $20,000, $30,000 a month from us. Well, how much is it going to cost us in staff and outside legal counsel to send out all this? And aren't we just playing whack-a-mole? Because as soon as you shut down one, there'll just be another one pop up. I mean, the internet's just full of this stuff. So it's probably just a business decision. It's about opportunity costs. It's about, is it worth the effort? And judging, I think these helpers and void fillers have kind of figured that dynamic out, because we're seeing, to give you an example, from in 2005, 2006, when DVD peaked, that's when the peak year, when Blu-ray came in, we were looking at 15,000 titles a year, and then it kind of drifted off, 11,000, 12,000, 13,000. When the pandemic hit, instead of it just dropping to zero, it went up. Suddenly we did 16,000. And then last year we did 22,000. These are numbers I've never seen before.
Right.
The first 5 months of this year, we've done 13,339 titles. If you do the math, you're tracking at 30,000 DVD releases over the course of a year.
Wow.
68% of that is coming from the underground. And the reason they focus on DVD is because it's backwards compatible.
Mm-hmm.
Most of your movies will run under 120 minutes. If you have to do something longer, if you're going to pirate a brand new theatrical film that's running 148 minutes, you go to Blu-ray. It's no big deal. We can burn those too. And I'm even seeing this in the last 18 months, we're now seeing 4K being burned and being distributed. Although I question how much time and effort's gone into the actual post work on some of these, but
yeah,
they're selling them as 4K, and the consumer probably can't tell the difference.
Yeah, most people won't notice or care.
All right, so just in the first 5 months of this year, 66 different helpers that I'm tracking in the DVD arena have sent out over 9,100 DVDs. When you break it down, it's not that they're all just pirating movies. They'll pirate anything that they can lay their hands on. Literally 4,800 of these pirated titles are theatrical catalog. That's 1996 to The Jazz Singer, Sound Era films. They like music too. They have almost 1,000 music titles, because
really?
Capital EMI, Sony Music, Uni Music, WIA, they're just Eagle Rock. I mean, Eagle Rock used to just put out some really great stuff. They don't do anything anymore.
Right.
They've just literally given up.
Yeah.
And so
So
the
you're talking
pirate,
about music, like a video format of music, like
yeah, whether it's a
concerts or music
concert
videos. Yeah.
or
Okay.
like all the great ABBA's greatest hits,
Yeah.
Billy Joel's greatest hits, that kind of stuff. Um, they just don't do it anymore. I
Right.
mean, it's far and few between. You got the Gaither brothers over at Universal Music,
Yeah.
their concerts, and that's about it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really slim pickings. Um,
Do you know that I want to ask you a
yeah,
question really quick. Time Life has been a giant in what we're talking about, music related content.
yeah.
They seem to be, I don't know if they're going under or what, but I've noticed some
Well, when this it comes, Heath, it comes down to this: if the studios won't enforce copyright protections, then how is like a Kit Parker or any of these other independents that are trying to do good things going to exist when the consumer doesn't know the difference between this and that, and they're getting absolutely body slammed by the indifference from the studios these days, and it becomes a marketplace where legitimate people are being driven out.
I wanted to show you. This is the Time Life. I tried to go to timelife.com. It's not there anymore. It's gone.
It's gone, huh? Okay.
It's gone.
Well,
They what's that?
somebody will fill that void.
Yeah, it's just crazy because they were about as there may have been somebody that was bigger than them as far, but I mean, I think of all the infomercials. I mean, I've got Time Life stuff all over the place. The Ed Sullivan classics and the Midnight Special. I believe they put out a box set of all kinds of different things. And now just to think that I guess they're still in stores, or I mean, I don't know, but yeah. So let me ask you this: so with this changing landscape of the first question I should have asked you is what you hit on with the number of physical media releases coming out, because people go, physical media is dead. I mean, every day, just about every
No,
day, someone says physical media is dead, right? But it's not. Um,
well,
Go
on
ahead.
Blu-ray, for example, we peak out around 3,000 titles a year, with all these streaming programs that are available. The Blu-ray helpers have just descended upon the market.
Mhm.
For the first 5 months, we've got 3,400 titles already released on Blu-ray, and if we're tracking at 7,000 titles to be released on Blu-ray. It's hard to keep up with. It's happening so fast.
Tell me about it. Because I'm reviewing these things. So I told you when I emailed you, it was like, I'm reviewing, you've been here since the beginning of the DVD format. I've been reviewing here at my channel since 2017. And every year I say, well, that was crazy. This next year can't be as busy as the previous year. And then it somehow manages to be even bigger.
Well, we're only, in the Blu-ray market, for example, what we see being studio centric is 25% of what's being released.
Right.
There's 75% that's happening elsewhere. Now, because any consumer can get on the internet, the shopping malls are empty. They're all at Amazon.
Right.
But once they find that Amazon isn't selling them anything that they want, they'll go look elsewhere. There's this, if you want to see a real flea market of piracy, log on to Etsy.
Oh, yeah.
Etsy used to be this artisans place where the artisans could go and sell their little crafts and stuff. Well, it didn't take long for the helpers to figure out that eBay was so yesterday and that Etsy is the current place where you can go. And it comes crazy. Now, what I don't chase down is these phantom honeypots from China and Sri Lanka and all this. I'm just looking at domestic, where I can document a domestic terrorist and just go after them. And fortunately, both eBay and Etsy will give you where they're located. So
Yeah.
I document those. Now there's three companies, and I won't get into who they are, but there's three companies that have HTTP sites that all have suspiciously the same mailing location. So they're a drop location on Ventura Boulevard out in Tarzana, California. So I suspect they're all the same people, and they just moving the stuff around to kind of the smart ones that have been at it for a while will mix in public domain. I mean, if you go over to this Elvis collector site, they'll mix in a lot of public domain, and then all of a sudden they'll just go a swarm of clearly copyrighted films, but nobody cares. Nobody goes after them. The studios are so intent on streaming these days that this, especially when they see the market as non-existing. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And somebody's making money, and it's very out of control.
If the studio, I'm going to field you a tough question, and you don't have to answer, but I'm curious what you think. If the studios don't care about the piracy, about the helpers, should we, as the customers, if I can't get one of the AIP movies that Susan Hart is holding hostage, should I care if I go bootleg that? Or if I
well, I'll give you some quick examples. Consumers will not wait around forever. Right. Coda wins Best Picture. It is not available legitimately anywhere. Apple Plus has decided they're not going to release it, and I would keep hoping for Criterion to pick it up and license it, or somebody license it, but they haven't put it out. So you can buy Coda at a dozen different places now. Disney is so mystifying to me. You spent all this money buying the Fox library, and you have the movie Prey. The Prey is a logical extension of the Predator and Alien conglomeration.
Yeah.
Why they haven't put it out on Blu-ray just to offer it to the fans makes no sense at all. Why is Mandalorian? Why is Andor? Why are all these Star Wars spin-offs? None of them are available from Disney. I mean, Disney put out like 6 DVDs in the first 5 months of this year, and like 5 Blu-rays. It's like they're not even in the business anymore. And they may be only putting this stuff out because maybe they're under contract to put out stuff on physical media, but they've got stuff in their library. They bought the whole entire Fox library, and they've done nothing with it.
That's what I wanted to say. They buy Fox, and then they're like, okay, and now it's all out of print. I mean, not all of it, but a lot of it went out of print when they bought Fox.
Yes.
And now there is that Mill Creek deal that was announced. I don't think we've actually seen the fruits of that yet, but the Mill Creek Entertainment has a deal with Disney to redistribute some titles that have gone out of print. So that's a step forward, but it's still just a drop in the bucket, because we're talking about, I mean, it's thousands of movies that would sell. And it seems like they just, I don't know. Somebody told me that, I mean, it's just speculation, but they're probably restructuring and figuring out what the best strategy forward to monetize that catalog would be. But it's been years now. What are they waiting on?
I don't get to sit in on these meetings. All I can do is look at what the trends are.
Right.
And the certain individuals, we'll call them helpers, pirates, void fillers, have collectively arrived at the same conclusion, that the studio's focus is elsewhere. And they're going to make money while the hay shine, while the sun shines. And they do it in ever increasing numbers. And if any of them disappear, get knocked down, get told to cease and desist, they just pop up again. I'll see literally, I don't know if I should mention names, but one of the most egregious Blu-ray pirates went down at the end of 2021 and was gone for a little bit, and then popped up again at the first part of 2022 under a different trade style, and magically all of the titles they had released before, plus everything since then, have magically reappeared. Now, I eliminated all the duplicates because I know who's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But literally every week they will take what's ever being dumped that week by whatever streaming platform, and they will have it, if it's a movie, within hours after its premiere. That's how good they are. I mean, they are, I almost hate to say it, but you have to admire how they've got this down to a science.
Yeah.
And they have a loyal customer base that see them as being legitimate source. And you need a copy of The Princess, which I guess Disney dumped $26 million in. They were running all across the banner of the Internet Movie Database there for like 3 weeks in a row. Every time you opened up the Internet Movie Database, there was an ad for The Princess, The Princess, The Princess. Bypassed theaters, went right to streaming, and now they're writing it off. But if you need it on Blu-ray, it's there.
Mm-hmm. All right, as we wind down, I want to ask you about what you think the future holds. I guess I'm curious also, not just for discs or home media, but also, how do you think this great streaming experiment is going to conclude? What direction are we going with this? It seems like it's unsustainable, right?
It is. You can't have all these different streaming platforms. There has to be consolidation at some point. I suspect the Warner Brothers and Disney seem to be the ones that are trying to position themselves to replace Netflix. I'm not quite so sure that they'll accomplish their goal, although Warner Brothers seems to be the better organized right now. I mean, it was funny, Zaslav, the new CEO of this Warner Brothers Discovery thing, he kind of let the cat out of the barn, or the monkey out of the pen, a couple of months ago, when he said that, just in a candid interview, he said that 60% of everything on HBO Max, nobody's watching. And that kind of tells you about why there's a writer's strike. Is because they're like Brer Fox and Brer Bear throwing Brer Rabbit in the briar patch. Please don't, please help us stop doing the things we're doing.
Yeah.
So they put mountains and mountains of these multi-million-dollar productions, whether it's a strip series or a film, into their series, into their streaming platforms, just spending money like a drunken sailor, and 60% of it no one's watching.
And you know what's crazy about that is that Warner Brothers has this massive library.
Oh, yes.
One of the biggest libraries, right? Because they have all these other companies that they've purchased, or that are part of the portfolio. You can't find a lot of it. Warner Archive releases 4 a
2
month,
or 3 Blu-rays a month. Yeah.
If they put some of those on Max, they put some of them on Max, but if you hey, Max has 500 like a whole vault of classics from the Warner Brothers library, I wonder if that would be a draw, or if like people just don't care. I don't know.
They just figured it'll be pirated.
Yeah.
No. When just kind of the inside baseball thing, when Warner Brothers retired George Feltenstein and moved the Warner Archive to Amazon to manage, that was the end of it. Warner Brothers or Amazon went through and purged all their DVD-R vendors that they were touting on a regular basis. They just purged all them. They just all disappeared. And you have to work to find a Warner Archive title on Amazon now. And they're the front load. You have Sony had their own, Universal had their own, MGM had their own, Fox is gone. They're not doing anything with it anymore, and it's maybe because they just think that there's no money in it because nobody's doing it. but they're completely unaware that that there are people doing it.
Do you think any of these companies are too big to fail? Do we live in a world where a Disney might go under, or I mean, I look at what happened with Fox. I look at MGM, right? I'm like, there's less companies on the now than there were 10 years ago.
If you go down the studios, Paramount and Universal need to have sort of a reality check and maintaining pace with some of their better well-heeled competitors. Lionsgate is being pretty good about trying to get out from under that debt that when they bought Stars. And they've been very cautious. It helps that you get a John Wick, but they take all the platforms. Anywhere you can make money, Lionsgate puts it there. Sony's kind of stayed off to the side, which begs the question, why do you need Hollywood anymore if all you're going to do is produce a film and sell it to somebody else to stream? There will be, because I would suspect, Heath, there's going to be consolidation. We're not going to have 50 different streaming platforms all doing the same thing. Somebody's going to try, one of them is going to try to replace Netflix. I mean, Ted's paying himself $1 million a week, and he's going to continue to do that until they figure out a way to put him out of business. So, consolidation is a simple answer.
What about, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask, so that was one path. I wanted to know about the studios and streaming. Now, what do you see the future for home media? Because when I hear this conversation that we've just had, when I think about it, you're telling me that what the studios release, with all the product that's come out since the pandemic, these thousands of releases every year, that's just a drop in the bucket. I'm like, well, is this the fire sale before everything's gone? Or is it just going to continue?
It's like, I remember when LPs were eliminated, vinyl, and then all of a sudden vinyl's back. And then I remember when I used to have regular conversations with my friends over at Eagle Rock. CD was CD, physical media, these. Yeah. That was going to go away. And then it's still back. I mean, you go over to MVD's site and look at what they have each month for new CDs.
Their catalog is like 48 pages every single month.
I know, it's insane. Yeah, and that's just the new stuff, and that's just their partner labels, the ones that work through them. So that's a whole different business. So, but they're akin. I think the consumers like having the physical media. They find some of these Netflix and Amazon Prime sites difficult to negotiate. They can't find what they want in terms of things that they might actually like. They just find lots of new things that, I mean, Netflix picks up these European, Polish and German things and then dubs them into English. And you're watching about 35 seconds of it and you go like, this is just absolute crap. And
but it's content.
Oh, but they've been selling. Yeah, they market it as being this brand new CIA spy thriller, and it's just nonsense. So, but I don't see physical media going away at all, and I think what a rational approach, and that's what Sony is kind of doing right now, would be to go back to the suit business, promo better best. The best is where you control everything, and that's it. Theatrically, you sell one admission, they see one movie, they don't own it, they just take the memory home with them. The next step would be physical media, where you own the product, you're selling them, and it's that unless they share it with their neighbor or their relative, it's pretty much one house for that product. Then you can get into all the other things. whether it's streaming, cable, whatever, however you network TV, you know, I mean, there's a whole network out there called, you know, the Hallmark Channel, Lifetime Channel, movies that my wife will put on sometimes, where the movie runs 84 minutes, but it takes 2.5 hours to get through because it's got one commercial after another in it.
That movie Weird, the Al Yankovic story, was a Roku movie, right? And it's like an hour and 45 minutes or something like that, but it's like a 2.5 hour watch because it's just, you have to watch the Roku commercials, the Roku channel commercials. Yeah.
Well, there's one very clever helper that is taking all these Hallmark movies as they're being broadcast for the first time, editing out all the commercials and putting it on DVD literally within a day of its first broadcast.
Wow.
And if you look at the fact that he keeps, or she, I think it's a woman that's actually running this company out of Las Vegas, keeps adding and adding, and the number keeps going up and up and up, which means they're successful. Because unless she's independently wealthy and willing to lose all the money in the world just to fulfill her fantasy of putting Hallmark movies on DVD, she's got to be making money at it.
Yeah.
So you just look at what you do is you look at the numbers, and you don't have to know what's going on. You just know something's happening. And the studios cannot continue to lose the kind of money they're losing and see their stock values erode. I mean, Disney's down like 16-18 billion dollars in stock value here in the last 30 days, and it has nothing to do with their stupid political battles with Florida. It all has to do with the numbers that they reported out. It's at some point when the stock gets down from 92 today, I guess it is, down to 68 and then 55 and then 42, at some point they're going to say, stop, you got to do something different. I think that's the near-term trend. In the long term, we're all dead. In the near term, I think over the next 5 years, you're going to see some consolidation. I think you're going to see a return to kind of a rational approach to managing assets, because the other line of attack, the current line of attack, is not sustainable.
We've just scratched the tip of the iceberg here, but I want to remind people that they can read your report weekly. You put it out weekly, right?
48 times a year. Yeah, it's
close to it. Yeah,
you can download the PDF file every week, or you can just read it's funny. About 10 or 12 years ago, I decided to repurpose all the editorial onto like a blog, and I didn't think anything of it. I just and then I linked it to the website, and when people began to see one to the other, I blew up my website. I literally just went out of capacity. I was down for 2 weeks. I had to scramble around and find a new host. And fortunately, I got a host here down in San Diego. It's nearby, and they're a delight, and everything works fine now. But I did something I thought was smart, to open it up to the consumer to read, what was going on and stuff like that. And all I did was make a lot of hell for myself.
Well, it has to be a labor of love, right? Because if it looks like there's a lot of labor involved.
Well, I enjoyed doing it only because I've been doing it so long. I have some really nice advertisers, sponsors. I do it because I enjoy doing it. And I always want to know what's over the next hill, see what's coming next. Plus, then I play bridge all the time, and then I'm working on the house and the yard and everything. So it's I could use a couple less hours sleep and a couple more hours to work, but you have to balance it out.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's DVD and Blu-ray release report.com. And social media outlets you want to promote? Are you on any of you on Twitter or anything like that? Or are you
No,
mostly
no,
just,
no. I don't have, seriously, I really don't have the time to,
I
I
hear
looked
you.
at Substack to try to do some publishing stuff, but it's just more time. I'd rather spend it working on playing bridge with some really cool people that I've
Mhm.
gotten to know over the years, and which is a game that I don't know if you're a card player, but it's like Texas Hold'em on steroids. And there's some players that are just so scary good. I
Yeah.
mean, this Mark Itabashi is like a legend. I mean, he's just genius level. Bill Gates is an avid bridge player. Never got to play against him, but I got to play in a couple of national tournaments and play against some guys that you just know from the way they're holding the cards, they're just better than you.
Some people just have like this extra
Oh
gene or
yeah.
this chromosome or something. Their brain doesn't even, it's like a computer or something. But listen, I'm going to say goodbye to you after we finish recording, but I want to wrap up with you here on the record and just say thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about this, your experience, your knowledge. I really appreciate you sharing it with me.
Hey, anytime you need anything, you know where to find me.
Thank you very much.
So
I've watched this episode a few times in the editing process. I'm a peek behind the scenes, so I edit the conversation before I film these introductions and the outros and stuff. And there's so much to wrap your head around here. There's so much that kind of blows my mind. How much helpers, as Mr. Tribby calls it, are impacting the industry, or how much they're not impacting the industry. I mean, they're putting a lot of product out there, but it doesn't really seem to be enough to get the attention of the studios, because as you heard, by the time they've hired lawyers or hired people to prosecute, is it worth it? The idea that most of the media that is being released is coming from educational institutions and sports teams and like how to things like that really blows my mind. And that people have tapped into Blu-ray as a storage format. I mean, we talk sometimes about standard definition on Blu-ray, and that confuses the mainstream. Meanwhile, the helpers are using it to great effect. It's really eye-opening to me, and I hope that it's eye-opening to you too, because there's so much. I see a lot of, in what we talk about here, I get a lot of comments and a lot of feedback where opinions are just facts. Like, well, I went into Target and they only have one aisle now of media, so it's dying. Well, this says otherwise, right? So it's interesting to have these numbers. Remember, you can follow Mr. Tribby and his very important, very well curated data 48 times a year at DVD and Blu-ray release report. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to Mr. Tribby. So thanks to you guys. Remember, please rate, review, subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment. Anything you can do to engage, anything you can do to share the word, it really does help this podcast. Listen, we're not trying to crack the top 10 of iTunes here. I just want people to know this podcast exists. It does pretty well on YouTube. Podcasts are like the wild, wild west now, because I think there's probably about 1,000 new podcasts every single week that launch. So it's hard to get noticed in the pod sphere. Anything you can do to help would be much appreciated. Guys, thank you so much. Take care. Until next time, I will catch you later.